Dear friends, welcome to our new video. If you are not subscribed the channel, please hit subscribe button and activate the bell button. Health and fresh air. How much air do we take in? We take in around 1 pint of air with each breath. Every minute, we breathe 18 times. Every minute, 9 quarts of air move in and out of the lungs. Once breathed, air is unfit for re-inhalation. It contains garbage and carbon dioxide, both of which deplete the body's strength. When you take 3 full breaths into a wide-mouthed jar or bottle, it will be so full of carbon dioxide that a lit candle or splinter will instantly go out when inserted. In less than half an hour, a cat trapped in a 2-foot square, 1-foot-high box will die. When British and Hindu forces were battling many years ago, the Hindus captured 146 British soldiers and imprisoned them in a chamber approximately the size of an ordinary schoolroom. Only 2 small windows were available. Due to the poor air quality, 123 of these men perished throughout the night. How much air should be allowed into a room? The waste-laden air that escapes the lungs swiftly mixes with the rest of the room's air. As a result, the air in the room quickly becomes contaminated. In 1 minute, 40 youngsters will release roughly 2 barrels of air. In a matter of minutes, this air will have contaminated all of the other air in the room. It can still be inhaled, but it makes children drowsy and indolent, and it can give them a headache. After that, they do shoddy work. Fresh air must be let in from the outside to keep a room's air pure. When there are a lot of people in a room, the openings must be large or fans on wheels must be used to force the air in. Every minute, a little more than a yard 3 of fresh air is forced into each classroom in New York. How to ventilate a room with fresh air. When air is heated, it lightens and rises. Fresh air heated by a furnace is pumped into the rooms of many public buildings through pipes that enter several feet above the floor. Impure air is drawn out of the space through apertures near the floor by a fan or a heated flue. Ventilation is the process of changing the air in a room. There must be 1 or more places for fresh air to enter and 1 or more places for it to exit in order to acquire enough fresh air in a room. If there is no furnace or fan, windows on one side of the room can be opened at the bottom to let in fresh air and closed at the top to let out stale air. Do not sit in a draft, instead, throw the air upward as it enters the window using a board or curtain. It is not advisable to keep a room excessively warm. Sitting in a hot room weakens the body and makes it more susceptible to cold. A living room's temperature should be between 65 and 70 degrees. While you sleep, you can breathe fresh air. Thousands of people have been debilitated and diseased as a result of sleeping in polluted air. Many people sleep with their windows shut so tightly that the air smells foul in the morning. Except in the hottest heat, I knew a family that always slept with the windows closed. 3 of the youngsters died of tuberculosis, while a 4th was infected but survived by keeping his windows open. In the morning, bad air in the sleeping chamber makes one feel tired rather than rejuvenated by sleep. While sleeping, your windows should always be open. In chilly weather, a window should be opened a foot at both the bottom and top, or both at the bottom if there are 2 windows in the room. In mild weather, the holes should be doubled in size. To keep the head warm, a cap can be worn, and the bed should be out of the draft. Fresh air is good for your health. Every day, 400 individuals in our country succumb to tuberculosis. It was once considered that no one could recover from this condition. 3/4 of people in the early stages of the disease are already cured. Fresh air is the most important component of the treatment. Medicine is rarely utilized because there is no cure for tuberculosis. Good nutrition and adequate rest are significant aids. Many tuberculosis patients spend their days outside and their nights in tents or with all of the windows open, even in the coldest temperatures. Snow may fall and the water in the room may freeze, but fresh air, the good angel of health, will restore the body's power and restore its health. Many years ago, when Indians lived in tents and frequently slept outside, no one had tuberculosis because of absence of unclean air. Since they began to live in dwellings, nearly half of some tribes have become infected with this contagious disease. Strengthening the lungs. To fill your lungs, you'll need over 3 quarts of air. Less than a pint of air flows in and out of your lungs when you breathe quietly. This demonstrates that a significant portion of the lungs is unused. The air sacs at the top and bottom of the lungs are rarely entirely filled. These are the locations where sickness begins. Exercising the lungs for a few minutes 2 or 3 times a day is recommended. Several times, thoroughly fill them with air. Learn to take deep breaths when walking in the fresh air. Hold your head up and shoulders back to allow all of your lungs to be full. Straighten your back. Your lungs are vital to your survival. Allow them to execute their jobs and educate them how to do it properly. Tobacco and pure air are 2 words that come to me when I think of tobacco. Tobacco smoke contains a poisonous substance. Its effect on insects demonstrates this. Tobacco stems and other waste parts are frequently purchased by greenhouse owners. They pile it in a pan and set fire to it after carefully closing the greenhouse's doors and windows. The smoke covers the entire home as it rises. It has killed many of the bugs and beetles that were devouring the plants in less than an hour. A person who is not used to tobacco may become ill after only an hour in a room where people are smoking. Smokers should not pollute the air that others must breathe. As a result, a smoking room needs to be well ventilated. Breathing. The lungs are 2 light spongy structures that fill the majority of the chest cavity. Between the lungs is where the heart is located. The lungs are made up of 2 sets of tubes and thousands of thin-walled sacs. One set of tubes transports air into and out of the lungs, while the other holds blood. A loose meshwork of tissue holds these sacs and tubes in place. Why do we take a breath? Taking air into the lungs and forcing it out is what breathing entails. The air is forced into the lungs so that a portion of it, termed oxygen, can enter the bloodstream. The oxygen is then carried by the blood to all parts of the body, where it can assist the organs in their functions. The air that leaves the lungs differs from the air that enters them. Some of the oxygen has been used up, and the body has released a heavier gas called carbon dioxide in its stead. This carbon dioxide is generated in every part of the body as a waste product of used up food and dying bodily parts. As a result, we breathe to bring oxygen into the body while also removing some waste. All animals require oxygen to survive. If we are unable to breathe for more than 4 or 5 minutes, we will die. The earthworm's blood receives oxygen directly through the skin. Bugs and flies have multiple small apertures along the sides of their bodies that lead to air-carrying tubes that branch out throughout the body. A fish breathes through its gills, which are located beneath a bony flap on each side of the head. The way air enters the lungs. Nostrils are the outside openings of the nose. 2 channels return from the nose to the throat from here. The pharynx is the throat cavity behind the nose and tongue. A tube comprised largely of gristle runs down the bottom of the throat. The larynx, or voice box, is a tube about the size of your thumb. The Adam's apple is a lump in the neck formed by a hump on its front section. The trachea, or windpipe, extends from the voice box to the lungs. The windpipe splits into 2 branches between the lungs at its lower end. Each lung receives one of them. In the lungs, there are air tubes. Like the limbs of a tree, the branch of the windpipe that enters each lung separates into smaller branches. These divide into even smaller tubes, which branch repeatedly until they are as little as a hair. The bulging ends of these hair-like tubes are known as air sacs. The air sacs have far thinner walls than tissue paper. In the lungs, the blood swaps waste for oxygen. The blood, which flows continuously from all areas of the body to the lungs, collects waste from burned food and organs that are dying. When blood reaches the lungs, it is full of carbon dioxide, a waste product. Over the air sacs, the blood tubes divide into fine branches with very thin walls, forming a dense network. This allows carbon dioxide and water to exit the blood tubes and reach the air sacs, while oxygen enters the bloodstream at the same time. On a daily basis, more than a pint of water is exhaled. The diaphragm, an upward arching sheet of muscle that forms the floor of the chest cavity, is responsible for breathing. This is held in place by the lower ribs. At rest, the ribs lean inward and downward. The chest cavity expands when the ribs are pulled up or the diaphragm's arch is lowered. The air then enters the lungs and expands them. The air is forced out of the lungs when the ribs are pulled down or the diaphragm arch is raised. Without thinking, we work the muscles to draw up the ribs about 18 times every minute, because all parts of the body are calling for oxygen. The harder we work, the oftener we breathe because the muscles need more oxygen to make them go. Why we should breathe through the nose. Most persons find it easy to breathe through the nose. In some, however, the passages in the nose are too small to carry the air without effort. On this account, they let the mouth hang open and breathe through it. The air should pass only through the nose because it is lined with hairs and tiny waving threads which catch the dust. In this way, germs and dirt are prevented from getting into the throat and lungs, and in winter the cold air is warmed. Why some children cannot breathe through the nose. When one has a cold, the lining of the nose becomes swollen and gives out a white substance called mucus. The swelling of the lining and the mucus fill up the passages. The nose should be kept clean by using a handkerchief and blowing out the mucus into it. Never put the finger into the nose. Disease germs often get on the fingers from things touched. Children who have the habit of breathing through the mouth should be examined by a physician. He will, in most cases, find soft spongy growths called adenoids in the back part of the nose. They should always be removed as soon as possible. They may cause disease or deafness and may even injure the mind. The voice. In the upper part of the voice box at the top of the windpipe is a fold of tissue stretched on either side. These two folds of tissue constitute the vocal cords. The air rushing past them causes sound. The different sounds are made by stretching the cords tight or loosely. By means of the tongue, teeth, and lips, the sound is formed into words. How to use the voice? A cold or much shouting makes the vocal cords swell and we become hoarse. Rest is the best cure. It is not polite to shout or whistle in the house, and you should never use an angry tone of voice. When talking to a person, always speak distinctly but pleasantly and turn your face toward his and look directly into his eyes. Never use a harsh, loud tone of voice. Why you should not spit on floors or sidewalks. We used to think that anyone well had no germs of sickness in his mouth, but we now know that many well persons have germs in their mouths which can cause long sickness when they get into other persons. If you are sick with diphtheria, scarlet fever, or sore throat, the germs of the disease are likely to remain in your mouth 2 or 3 months. Persons with tuberculosis throw out millions of these germs in their spit every day. Spitting is not only an unclean habit but a deadly curse. Spit often contains the seeds of death. Women's skirts and the soles of our shoes carry it into the houses. It becomes dry, but the germs live and float about in the dust, then enter the mouth to make us sick. Carelessness with spit is said to cause more than 100 deaths every day in our land. Do not use an open spittoon. It is much safer to have a smallpox patient in the house than an open spittoon in the summer. You can prevent the smallpox by vaccination, but you cannot keep the flies from carrying 10,000 germs of death from the spittoon to the food on the table. 1 million germs have been found on a single fly. Spit should be dropped into a cup which should be kept covered when not being used. The spit should be destroyed by fire or some germ-killing fluid, such as lye or formalin. Keeping sickness away from the throat and lungs. All sickness of the throat and lungs is caught from someone else. The germs are passed from one to another on the drinking cup, by sucking pencils, wetting the finger to turn the pages of a book, or putting the fingers in the nose or mouth. Dust is the partner of disease. It contains germs. Avoid dust. Wipe up the rooms with a damp cloth, never use a feather duster. Avoid dry sweeping. Use a suction cleaner or have rugs which can be cleaned out of doors. Give the lungs fresh air and deep breathing, and the body good food and plenty of sleep to make it so strong that germs cannot overcome it when they enter. Alcoholic drink and the lungs. The most common disease of the lungs is tuberculosis. Nearly all bartenders who sell strong drink take some themselves. Lately it has been learned in Germany that tuberculosis causes 1/2 of all the deaths among bartenders. Alcohol was once thought to be a good medicine for lung troubles, but it has been clearly proven that beer and whiskey weaken the lungs and make them ready for the germs of disease. The body already weakened by the poison of the alcohol is then easily overcome by the disease. Tobacco and the lungs. The occasional use of tobacco does not seem to hurt the lungs when fully grown. A study of many young persons has shown that the chest of smokers grows much more slowly than in those who do not use tobacco. As the lungs cannot grow any faster than the chest, they must grow slowly in boys using much tobacco. Tobacco is a common cause of sore throat. Many smokers have been compelled to quit the habit because of throat troubles. If you like the video, press like and have a look on the references in the description box.